If a dog wags its tail at you, you know it wants to be your friend. There are a lot of positive emotions flowing between the two of you. What happens if the tail is wagging the dog? That's a different matter altogether. You better watch out then. The tail wagging the dog is an idiomatic expression for something which is least significant or least important of something taking over the more important or much more significant part of something. It's typically where the subordinate takes control of the boss. A very good example for the tail wagging the dog is back seat driving. I prefer to call it passenger seat driving because that's where the spouse of the driver would be sitting and continually berating the driver on how the car should be driven. Please note here, I have not ascribed any gender to the spouse because both the wife and the husband are equally capable of passenger seat driving. And in this case, this is a typical case of tail wagging the dog, and in this particular case, the dog is mightily pissed. Nowadays, tail wagging the dog has got shortened to just wag the dog after a very popular and humorous and slightly satirical film of the same name, starring two of the very great Hollywood stars, Robert De Niro and Dustin Hoffman. In this film, the incumbent president is seeking a re-election, and a few days before the polling date, a sex scandal hits him like a ton of bricks. Robert De Niro and Dustin Hoffman come in here and create a fictitious war in Albania in order to divert the public attention away from the sex scandal. Typically, wag the dog happens when elections are on the anvil. So people in India must have seen and experienced several cases of wag the dog in the past few months. Now, wag the dog, for wagging the dog, top corporates and governments across the world, they employ professionals called spin doctors. Typically, spin doctors are professionals, so they are people like probably the Bedis and Prasannas and Shane Vaughns and Ashwins with doctorate degrees. Otherwise, why else would they be called spin doctors? Now, they are great at scripting a fiction to turn away the public attention from something that the government or the top corporate did that boomeranged, or some kind of goof up that happened, or some kind of scandal that hit them. So they are real professionals, these spin doctors, at wagging the dog. But then wagging the dog also happens to ordinary people, regular people like you and me. We have been the tail that wagged the dog and the dog that got wagged by the tail, depending on the circumstance. Remember when you went to the store, a nearby store, to buy something which is inexpensive that you needed urgently and ended up paying several times more to buy something that you did not need at all? This is typically a case of the salesperson in the store being the tail, wagging the dog, which is you. How many times have we succumbed? So many times we have succumbed to peer pressure and advertising and ended up paying through our nose to possess something that we might never use in our lives. Wagging the dog happens to all of us. Sometimes, like in these cases, we have been the dog, but we have also been the tail, mind you, the tail that wagged the dog. Go back to your school days. Remember the day when you walked home from school with your report card with most of the scores marked in red, and you had to get that report card signed by your parent, and you knew that if your parent sees the marks that you have scored, there was very likely going to be a nuclear fission at home. So what do? So you start scheming on how to divert your parents' attention while they are signing the card. So this happens to all of us. You don't have to feel guilty about it, because human beings by nature are manipulative. So it happens to all of us. What you need to, however, watch out for is not to allow wagging of the dog within you. Imagine if your heart were to wag your brain and you get to take some decisions during that time, you might live to regret those decisions for the rest of your life. So better watch out.